If you have a painful memory or persistent anxiety, modern wellness culture gives you a very clear instruction. You must look right at it. We are taught difficult feelings operate like a biological mass inside us. If we ignore them, they stay inside. They fester and eventually take over. This idea comes straight out of early psychoanalysis. The belief was that all psychological pain requires processing on a therapist's couch. You have to drag your traumas out into the light, analyze them, and talk through them. Today, you see this concept everywhere, from clinical therapy spaces to wellness influencers online. Psychologist Ethan Kross calls it the myth of universal approach, the absolute certainty that the only healthy way to handle negative emotions is confronting them head-on. The logic is straightforward. Turn away from your trauma, and you prolong your suffering. The problem is, when looking at how people actually survive extreme situations, this rule falls apart. Take Kross's own grandmother. She survived the Holocaust by hiding in the Polish woods, enduring forced migration and managing immense poverty. In the decades that followed, she never went to therapy. She compartmentalized her grief and almost never engaged with it outwardly. By modern standards, she did everything wrong. Yet she lived a long, deeply content life, raising a family and finding genuine happiness. Or look at a completely different kind of pressure cooker, the 1998 NBA Finals. The Chicago Bulls were 2 games into a grueling series against the Utah Jazz, chasing their 6th championship. And right in the middle of it, their star defensive player, Dennis Rodman, vanished. Instead of preparing for Game 4, Rodman decided to skip practice and media obligations to escape to Las Vegas. He completely walked away from the stress of the impending game, spending his time partying and attending wrestling matches. He came back from that bender, walked onto the court, and grabbed 14 rebounds in under 30 minutes of play. His absolute refusal to engage with the stress of the finals allowed him to perform at the highest level, helping the Bulls secure the championship. According to textbook psychology, both a Holocaust survivor and a Hall of Fame athlete relied on the exact same coping mechanism, toxic avoidance. The fact that it worked so well for both of them suggests our strict rules about emotional processing are missing something crucial. To see why avoiding our emotions can sometimes save us, we have to look at what fear actually does to the brain. Researchers Edna Foa and Michael Kozak explain that when you experience a threat, your mind creates a mental representation of it. It hooks a scary memory to an image, creating a looping tape. Your brain plays the tape over and over, demanding attention. This is why chronic avoidance is dangerous. The unresolved hazard alerts pile up and jam the system. But confronting the tape isn't our only biological defense mechanism. We have a psychological immune system. Like white blood cells attacking a virus, this system dulls the sharp edges of emotional distress, allowing us to gain distance from the initial shock. The primary fuel for this immune response is time, and the only way to give your mind enough time to metabolize the pain is to step back and distract yourself. You have to look away for the immune system to do its job. This leaves us caught between 2 conflicting biological mandates. The brain's threat monitor sounds an alarm, telling you to stare directly at the problem to solve it. Meanwhile, your psychological immune system tells you to walk away and distract yourself so the wound can heal. After the towers fell on September 11th, a leading expert on human resilience named George Bonanno realized he had an opportunity to see how people balance these conflicting drives in the wake of immense collective trauma. Bonanno brought New York City college students into his lab and established a baseline for their emotional distress. Then he put them in front of a computer showing both positive and negative images, with a hidden observer rating their reactions. On command, the students had to either actively express their emotions or completely suppress them. 18 months later, his team checked back in to see who was coping the best. The data showed that the people who relied purely on processing their emotions were struggling, but so were the people who constantly suppressed them. The results suggest that long-term psychological health depends on a high degree of agility. The subjects who thrived were those who could consciously toggle their mental spotlight, facing the pain when necessary, but moving their attention away when they needed temporary relief. When Dennis Rodman walked away from the court, it was a tactical withdrawal. When Ethan Kross's grandmother quietly boxed up her wartime memories, she was deploying a survival mechanism. They were both masterful switchers. They intuitively knew how to turn their attention away from pain so they could function, and only looked back at it when they were safe. If science shows that both engaging with your feelings and distracting yourself are valid strategies, the practical question is how you decide which one to use when you're dealing with a crisis. Think of avoidance and approach as specific tools in a toolbox. A hammer is great for driving a nail, but useless for tightening a screw. Coping mechanisms operate the exact same way. They are highly context-dependent. Because everyone's psychological immune system behaves differently, there is no master checklist for when to use which tool. The only reliable diagnostic metric is to look at your own behavior and ask one question: is it working? If you say something embarrassing at a party and you choose to distract yourself by watching funny videos instead of analyzing your mistake, and you wake up feeling fine, that counts as working. The strategy provided temporary relief, and the anxiety didn't cause any long-term disruption to your life. Regulating your emotions isn't a test of moral purity. You don't get extra credit for constantly confronting your darkest fears. If looking away from a problem lets you get on with your day without it blowing up in your face later, the tool did its job. Of course, these tools can fail. When your approach strategy breaks down, the biggest warning sign is what psychologists call chatter. You find yourself trapped in a mental traffic circle, analyzing the exact same details over and over without ever finding a new insight or taking an exit. You're confronting the problem, but making zero progress. Avoidance has its own distinct failure states. The first is when your chosen distraction simply stops working. If you go to a movie to stop thinking about a fight with your spouse, but every scene just reminds you of the argument, your psychological immune system is overwhelmed. The pain is bleeding through the distraction. The second warning sign is relying on heavy, destructive distractions to forcefully silence the threat monitor. Masking anxiety with chronic alcohol use, compulsive gambling, or doom scrolling provides a massive hit of temporary relief, but guarantees severe long-term harm. The final sign of failed avoidance is the most deceptive: excessive reassurance seeking. If you spend hours deep-diving medical research to try and fix an unlikely health fear, you might feel like you're actively solving a problem. In reality, you are just using the internet to avoid dealing with your underlying anxiety about uncertainty. Taking care of your mind does not mean staring unblinking into the fire of your past traumas until you burn out. True psychological resilience requires agility. It's the strength to face the dark when you need to make sense of the world, combined with the practical wisdom to know exactly when to look away.